Imagine trekking deep into a remote jungle or desert plain, only to stumble upon footprints that don't quite match any modern human, too large, too primitive, too strange. For centuries, scientists, explorers, and local communities have whispered the same question. What if we are not the only humans left? This video isn't just about bones hidden in dusty museums. It's about a forgotten human species that may still be alive today, roaming the fringes of the world, cloaked in mystery, lingering in legend. Hold on, because by the end of this journey, you might never look at the human family tree the same way again. Picture a sprawling family reunion. You walk into the hall expecting a few familiar relatives, but instead you find dozens of cousins, distant aunts, and odd uncles you never even knew existed. That's basically human evolution in a nutshell. For most of the 20th century, the story was told simply. We evolved from primitive ancestors, step by step, until modern humans appeared as the crowning achievement. Neat, linear, comfortably flattering. But as fossils kept turning up, that tidy narrative shattered. Instead of a straight line, our family tree looked more like a crowded, tangled bush. And in that bush, surprises that made the scientific world sit bolt upright. Take the Denisovans, for example. Until 2010, nobody even knew they existed. Scientists unearthed just a single pinky bone and a couple of teeth in a Siberian cave. Yet DNA analysis revealed something shocking. This wasn't Neanderthal. It wasn't modern human. It was someone else. A whole other species of human that had shared the earth with us. Even more astonishing, Denisovans weren't just neighbors in the past. They live on inside us. Today, millions of people across Asia and Oceania still carry fragments of Denisovan DNA, proof of ancient encounters that rewired our genetic heritage. Then came Homo floresiensis, discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores in 2003. Standing barely over 3 feet tall, with tiny skulls and primitive features, they were immediately nicknamed hobbits. At first, many thought they must be diseased modern humans, perhaps individuals with dwarfism. But the evidence kept piling up. These weren't anomalies. They were a genuine, separate branch of humanity, walking the earth as recently as 50,000 years ago. That's practically yesterday on the evolutionary timescale. And here's the twist. Homo sapiens wasn't alone back then. We weren't the culmination of the story, but one character in a complex drama where multiple human species coexisted, competed, and sometimes even joined forces. Which begs a tantalizing question. If so many human cousins once walked the same ground as us, how sure are we that they're all gone? Here's the thing about the fossil record. It's not so much a book as it is a puzzle box that somebody rudely shook before handing it to us. Pieces are missing, edges don't align, and half the time you're not even sure if the pieces belong to the same picture. For every headline discovery like the Denisovans or hobbits, there are dozens of questions that refuse to sit quietly in the background. Scientists know that between Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and us, there had to have been other species filling the evolutionary gaps. But their bones, mostly dust. What remains are whispers. A jawbone fragment here, a tooth there, genetic traces we can't match to any known species. Take DNA technology, for instance. In recent years, genomic studies have revealed something astonishing. Modern humans carry genetic material that doesn't trace back to Neanderthals or Denisovans. In other words, there's evidence of encounters with a ghost population, an unknown branch of humanity that left its fingerprints inside our very cells, but not a single skeleton we can confidently label. Imagine knowing that some of your great-great-great-great-grandparents weren't even our species, yet we can't put a face to them. That alone hints that the family reunion still has chairs filled by invisible guests. And some puzzles are flat-out eerie. Fossils from China and Southeast Asia reveal archaic skulls that look almost human, but not quite. They've been described as hybrids, mosaics of features that don't neatly match any known group. The implication: either there were more species than we have named, or there were populations blending in ways far stranger than anthropologists used to believe. So here we are, staring at gaps in the record, holding genetic breadcrumbs that point into the dark. And whenever science reaches into this unknown, legends and folklore begin to stir. Because while scientists whisper of ghost lineages, remote communities have been telling stories of shadowy, almost human beings for generations. When the fossil record begins to falter, human storytelling tends to step in. And here's the fascinating part. In remote corners of the world, the tales people tell aren't always about spirits or gods. Sometimes they sound almost biological. Accounts of beings that look like us, move like us, but aren't quite us. Take the jungles of Flores, the very place where fossils of Homo floresiensis were unearthed. Long before any archaeologist stormed in with a shovel, local villagers spoke of the Ebu Gogo, small, hairy people who lived in caves, stole food, and muttered in a strange language. Skeptics dismissed it as folklore, of course. But after the discovery of the hobbit bones in 2003, those jungle stories suddenly felt a lot less fanciful. Could memory stretch across generations in mythic form, preserving the faint echo of real encounters? Or consider the remote forests of Sumatra, where tales of the Orang Pendek, a short, powerful, human-like creature, have persisted for centuries. Witnesses, including modern explorers, describe it walking upright, with distinctively human features. Critics call it misidentified wildlife. Believers wonder if it's something more, a relict population of forgotten hominins still eking out a secret existence in the wild. And then there are the far-flung myths of giants, from the Denisovan strongholds of Siberia to mountain tales in the Himalayas. If Denisovans really were as robust and powerfully built as skeletal evidence suggests, it's tempting to think that their specter still lingers in legends of towering, broad-shouldered beings roaming alpine passes. None of this would hold much weight if taken alone, but stack the fossils, the DNA breadcrumbs, the gaps, and the myths side by side, and something uncanny emerges. Evolutionary science and cultural memory seem to hum the same tune, a melody hinting that our story may not be over, that other human branches could have walked into the mist rather than into extinction. As Chapter 2 begins, we'll step away from dusty bones and ancestral strands of DNA and into the living world, where modern encounters, expeditions, and whispered sightings keep this possibility very much alive. Science gives us bones and DNA, but stories, passed hand to mouth across generations, give us something harder to measure: eyewitness encounters. And scattered across the globe in jungles, mountains, and frozen frontiers, people insist they've glimpsed something very human and very much not Homo sapiens. In Sumatra, the lush rainforest hums with tales of the Orang Pendek. Small but muscular, this creature is said to stride upright, its footprints eerily human yet shorter, stockier. Farmers whisper of stolen fruit, trackers describe fleeting silhouettes, and in the 20th century, even European explorers claimed sightings. The name itself means short person, not a beast, not a monster, but a person. If taken at face value, it sounds less like a myth and more like a stubbornly surviving cousin of humanity. Then we travel north to the vast, icy sprawl of Siberia, where legends tell of towering, broad-shouldered beings haunting remote trails. Reindeer herders recall footprints too large to belong to wolves or bears. Anthropologists can't help but think of Denisovans, their remains found in these lands, their genetic legacy stamped across millions of modern people. The idea that such a species might cling to survival in desolate wilderness is wild, yet hauntingly plausible. Head to the Himalayas and stories of the Yeti dominate. Clumps of unexplained hair, giant footprints pressed into snow, startled climbers swearing they saw something vanish into the mist. Dismissed by skeptics as misidentified bears, the claims nevertheless echo a theme as old as folklore itself. There are others here, living just beyond the edge of what we know. And it's not just Asia. Tales from Africa recount mysterious forest people, descriptions that sound startlingly close to extinct hominins like Australopithecus. Indigenous groups in North America preserve oral traditions of hairy, human-like beings who avoid contact, legends that later shaped the modern Bigfoot phenomenon. Are these just campfire fantasies, or blurry memories of real, flesh and blood beings our ancestors once knew all too well? Before we dismiss these accounts, we need to see what happens when science and boots actually hit the ground in search of proof. When explorers, scientists, and adventurers step into the field chasing these stories, the line between serious anthropology and fringe speculation becomes razor thin. Some expeditions come back with astonishing clues, others with photographs of blurry shadows and a lot of mosquito bites. Still, the pursuit itself shows how compelling the mystery really is. Let's head back to Sumatra. Researchers from the early 1900s through the late 20th century reported finding footprints of the Orang Pendek, prints so distinctly human-like that they couldn't be brushed off as tiger tracks or wandering monkeys. More recently, Western biologists and cryptozoologists mounted expeditions to collect hair samples and unidentified scat. Some of that evidence was tested in labs, and while results were murky, many samples linked to known animals. There were just enough anomalies to keep the trail alive. In the Himalayas, scientific expeditions in the 1950s and beyond unearthed casts of giant footprints in the snow. Some turned out to be misidentified animal prints stretched by melting ice, but others still hang in museum collections, unusually human-shaped and difficult to explain away. DNA tests on supposed Yeti hairs often later identified them as belonging to bears or yaks. Yet skeptics aside, mountaineers continue to swear they've seen something upright and uncanny moving in the mist. Then there's Siberia, an expanse so vast it's almost alien. Sovietera reports detail hunters and villagers describing hulking, broad-shouldered figures disappearing into the taiga. A few scientists even tried linking these sightings to possible relic Denisovan populations. While mainstream anthropology treats such claims with raised eyebrows and probably a stiff drink, the tantalizing part remains. Denisovans lived here, we've found their bones here, and no one can completely seal the door on their persistence. Skeptics point out, rightly, that extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof. Blurry photos, footprints with vague origins, and local stories aren't ironclad evidence. Yet the persistence of these clues and the sheer consistency of descriptions across cultures gnaw at the edges of disbelief. So are these all misidentifications, illusions, or hopeful projections? Or are they breadcrumbs, daring us to follow them to something revolutionary? Let's set aside skepticism for a moment and imagine the unthinkable, that somewhere in the dense jungles of Southeast Asia, the snowy passes of the Himalayas, or the endless forests of Siberia, another human species still walks the earth. What would that mean? Not just for science, but for us. First, it would rewrite history in real time. Think about it. For centuries, humans have pictured ourselves as the sole survivors, the last branch left standing. To suddenly meet a cousin face to face, a living representative of Homo floresiensis or Denisovans, wouldn't just be a scientific bombshell, it would be an existential one. Textbooks would be out of date overnight. Museums would scramble to redesign exhibits. And every assumption we've made about human uniqueness would need a serious reality check. Second, it would spark immense ethical questions. If another human species exists, how do we treat them? As protected wildlife? As fellow humans with rights equal to ours? The idea of placing them under a microscope or in captivity feels chilling. Yet reaching out, contacting, or even observing them could expose them to dangers, from modern diseases to exploitation. Survival has kept them hidden this long for their sake. It might need to stay that way. Third, the discovery would rock philosophy, religion, and culture. Faith traditions that frame humanity as singular and divinely distinct might suddenly have to face the reality that we are not alone. On a cultural level, we'd be forced to rethink our own identity. Are we still the pinnacle of evolution, or just one of several intelligent species that managed to scrape by? And finally, at the deepest emotional level, meeting these forgotten cousins would remind us of our own fragility. Once, dozens of humans shared this world. Most vanished. We are here by chance, not destiny. And if they still remain, they are living testaments to the truth that the human story is not finished. So here we stand, at the edge of possibility, caught between skepticism and wonder. Science strains to explain it. Myth sings it. And maybe, just maybe, history has a few more humans left to reveal. For centuries, we've comforted ourselves with the idea that humans stand alone, unique survivors in a world where every other branch of our family tree withered into dust and fossils. But the deeper we dig, the stranger the story becomes. DNA whispers of missing relatives we've never seen. Fossils hint at cousins who were far more recent than we ever imagined. And across cultures and continents, the legends stubbornly echo a single theme. We are not, perhaps, so alone after all. Whether the forgotten human species is still out there, or whether they live on only in myth and memory, one truth remains undeniable. Our history is not neat, not straight, not simple. It is wild, tangled, messy, and breathtakingly mysterious. And the possibility that another species of human might still be walking beneath the same sky as us transforms our understanding of what it means to be human. If they are still here, surviving in secret, that's not just biology, it's poetry. It means the story of humanity is still being written, in footprints on jungle trails or snowfields high in the mountains, waiting for the day when the world is finally ready to see. And maybe that's the real message of all these fossils, myths, and whispers. Curiosity is our superpower. The willingness to ask, could it be true? Is what has carried us from caves filled with firelight to a planet wired with satellites. Whether we find living cousins or not, the search itself tells us something vital. We have never stopped wondering about who we are and who we might still encounter. So here's my question for you. If tomorrow morning the news broke that another human species had been discovered alive, hiding in plain sight, how would it change the way you see yourself? If that thought sparks wonder in you, if you believe the human story is bigger, stranger, and more beautiful than we've been taught, stick around. This channel is for explorers of the unknown, for thinkers who crave mystery, for dreamers who believe the impossible is worth chasing. Hit that subscribe button, share this journey with a friend who loves mysteries, and keep that curiosity wild. Because the story of us isn't finished, not even close.